I'm going to be looking at a practical level about how we're using Alma at the University of Salford to address many of the challenges that the universities are seeing today. And a lot of things that Fiona's mentioned are things that we've kind of seen and dealt with and tried to address while we've been using Alma. So I just thought, just put a bit of introduction to myself and what I do and my involvement in Alma at Salford. So I'm the digital library manager. My team manages Alma on a day-to-day basis. We support Alma. I work with service delivery managers to ensure that we're getting the best utilisation from Alma, that we're making as many efficiencies as possible, that when new enhancements are introduced, that we're actually analysing how they can be introduced into the service and make improvements. I was the project manager on the Alma implementation. I remember Fiona from Plymouth. We were early adopters with Plymouth along with other UK institutions. I know some of them are here today. And prior to that, I was also involved in writing the business case. I didn't just project manage the implementation. I was involved in securing funding and support across the university to get Alma implemented at Salford. So I'm going to talk today the obligatory who is Salford and what we are, the university and the library. I'm going to look at why we decided to change the library management system. So again, a lot of the challenges that Fiona's mentioned were drivers for us to move forward and make changes. And practically what have we achieved in solving some of the issues that we had? And also, where do we see ourselves going and what we'll be working on in the coming months with the Alma system? So an introduction to Salford, probably a more famous neighbour is Manchester. We're just 2 miles away from the centre of Manchester. You may be more familiar with Media City UK, which is the northern home of the BBC. A lot of controversy when the BBC moved up north. So they're based in Salford, and we have a campus right at the heart of Media City. So in case you're not aware, obviously BBC is there, but it's a real cultural media hub, and we have got a lot of collaboration there with the university, our students, and Media City, and now ITV have also moved in there as well. We do a lot of work with our local community. Salford, the University of Salford itself is one of the area's biggest employers, and we're involved in a £650 million regeneration with the local community. The university itself, we've got 18,000 students, 3,000 of those are international, and we're continuing to develop our portfolio. We're delivering more and more courses to our students overseas. We have 2,500 members of staff and split into 4 colleges and 9 schools. A lot of our courses are very industry-based. We're doing a lot at the moment on developing things called industry collaboration zones. So where Fiona mentioned before about academics saying, kind of employers saying that we're not preparing our students for work, this is something that the university is working to address. So we're bringing in these ICZs, where we'll be having industry partnerships, giving our students real-world experience of working with industry, both digitally and physically. We're currently undergoing a big campus redevelopment project. So again, lots of new buildings, lots of new ways of thinking about how our library is best placed to support that, and also a lot of work going on in the library as well. Last year we opened new student residences on campus, so we've got a real change in dynamic of the use of the campus now. We've got far more students actually on the campus 24/7, and that means that our library service has to be available to kind of support that changing need of our students. We're currently based across 3 sites, the library itself, so we're currently reducing down to 2 sites. So over the summer, we're undergoing a big library redevelopment project. One of our sites is closing, so we're currently moving all the books up to our main Clifford Whitworth library. We have 400,000 physical books. As Fiona's talked about, the physical reducing. A few years ago, this figure was far higher, and we can see now that our physical collection is reducing down, whereas our electronic collection is increasing. So we've got 325 physical journal titles, again, very small collection. But we can see the increase in our e-journal collection. So we have 17,000 e-journals, 300,000 e-books. We are 100% self-service, so we don't have issue and returns desk. Everything is done at our self-check machines. And we are a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week library. Last year we opened for 364 days. The only day we closed was Christmas Day. I was the last member of staff there on Christmas Eve, so I can vouch that we were open to the bitter end. We also, it's important for us to ensure that we have a 24-hour digital library, that we have that support all the time, and that our systems are available for our users to access. To that end, we ensure that we've got 24-hour support, so we have chat available to our users after library closing hours. We have a staff library till 1 a.m. in the morning. After that, it moves over to security, but we have 24-hour chat that we turn the service over to our users if they're accessing Primo or accessing any of our collections. Always have access to somebody to support them while using our services. I've mentioned that we're undergoing a library redevelopment project. Our Clifford Whitworth Library was built in the 1960s and really doesn't meet our demands. We've got lots of concrete floors when we can't sink cabling into and have power points where we need them. So we're currently undergoing a redevelopment project to try and rectify that and really meet our student demands. We're also expanding the Clifford Whitworth Library, mainly because we're closing one of our physical libraries. So as Fiona's mentioned, that need for more study space, we're trying to accommodate that into the library. And again, we're seeing some reduction in our physical stock. That's due for completion next summer. So there's lots of work going on. We're having to kind of do a lot of work with the systems to ensure that we're keeping students informed of what's happening, moving stock around and things like that. So just to start talking about our Alma Journey, this probably goes back to 2009 when the University of Salford Library devised a digital library plan. And the main driver for that was our Media City campus. So we have this campus at Media City, a very, very small physical collection. I heard somebody in the audience before talking about the building being a learning resource centre, and that's exactly what Media City is. We've got a very small collection, but generally the building is seen as a learning resource centre. And the focus is very much on on digital collections and electronic resources and seamless access. We've talked before about the importance of people just having that access and not having to go through a plethora of authentication. They want information delivered kind of at that point in time without the complexities. And that was one of the main drivers for us moving forward with this digital library plan. So we started a review of our systems. The first thing that we did was we implemented RFID, and that was to support the move to self-service and 24-hour opening so that we could reduce the demand on the customer service staff and the support desk. We then implemented Primo in 2011, and again that was to really reduce down the number of discovery interfaces that our users were working with. So they were working with SFX, they were using a library catalogue, and we wanted to simplify that as far as we could. So we put Primo in. Although the catalogue was still working in the background, our users basically had to go through Primo to access the catalogue. We cut off all access to the catalogue, they couldn't search it at all, and they had to go via Primo, therefore basically reducing it down to a single search interface. We then started to review our library systems architecture. So we had Talis Alto, we were using the library Talis Prison Catalogue, SFX Metalib, and we also had an in-house electronic resource management system. Fiona mentioned spreadsheets. Well, this was an Access database, so maybe a bit more advanced, but not much. And so we were really keen to be able to reduce that down into a single system where we could. So the main area of the systems review, the main area of concern was our library management system. We'd had Talis since 1996, and some of the main areas for us were around the management and discovery of electronic resources. We'd been involved in a GIST-funded project called MERRY, which focused on electronic resource issues, and we couldn't see any way forward with our existing system of being able to manage our electronic resources, the licenses and access. We were really struggling to integrate with third-party systems. Fiona mentioned about using Keystone and kind of with Talis. It was very, very difficult. If we wanted to integrate with a third-party system, we had to get a consultant to do the work, and we were paying quite a lot of money for that work to be carried out, as well as having lots of connector licenses. So if, say, we were connecting to Primo from our library system, we were paying a substantial annual fee for that. Equally with our self-check machines, again, we were paying an annual license for each of those self-check machines. Spreadsheets, again, limitations of workflows and processes. So we'd shoehorned a lot of our processes into a system that just couldn't manage them. It wasn't managing electronic resources. We were maintaining lots of workarounds, lots of manual processes, lots of spreadsheets. I mentioned already that it was becoming very, very expensive to maintain. And one of the big areas for us was that it was maintained by the university's IT department. So as Fiona said, we do love IT, but it was very, very frustrating for us. As a library, we didn't have access to any of the servers. So we basically had to ask for any changes to be made, some quite basic changes, things like configuration changes, moving stock in bulk, etc. Had to go through our IT department, and we wanted to really get some control back to the library and be more responsive to changing needs that we were seeing across our library service. Writing the business case, we had to make sure that we were talking university language. It wasn't just enough to say, we don't like this system anymore and it doesn't work for us and we need to replace it. We had to align it to our university strategy. So we had to have a real understanding of the direction that the university was going in, how it's going to improve the student experience, etc. So we brought Ken Chad Consulting in, who worked with us on the business case, and we took that out to various university committees and departments, higher committees, to get support and funding for the project. So what did the business case focus on? What did we see were the drivers for change? Firstly, we can see that there was change in user demands, the fact that we wanted to simplify the discovery interfaces that our users were working with. We'd already removed that kind of separate layer of the library catalogue, but we wanted to bring in that personalised experience. We wanted the users to be able to go in and view their account information. And we also wanted to bring things into other university systems such as our VLE. We wanted to be able to integrate and bring information in for our users to view their account information when they log into Blackboard. Similar graph to Fiona's, we can see there that our physical book issues have been reducing. These are more recent figures, but we could see the trend way back then that our book issues were reducing substantially, whereas our e-book requests and our e-journal requests were increasing. And we very much wanted to focus that we needed a system that was able to meet these changing demands. While Talis was very, very good at managing print, it was fantastic for managing print, there was no workflows within the system to manage our electronic resources. So that was a key message that we wanted to get out. Moving to the cloud was an issue for debate. We'd recently implemented a new IT infrastructure in the university. So our head of IT was a little bit concerned that we wanted to move our library management system out to the cloud. So it was really important that we were able to convey the benefits of that to them. We were keen to move to a site supply and maintain system, something where we didn't have to worry about scheduling jobs, we didn't have to go to IT. I talked to Fiona before about kind of any maintenance that we did on the system. We had to kind of book things in weeks in advance. We'd have to go through various groups and have a full implementation schedule just to restart a server. So we wanted something where we had more flexibility with our suppliers to be able to do that. Interesting that Fiona mentioned about being peripatetic and our staff being able to move around. That was one of the key things for us. So our previous library management system, we had client software on PCs and staff had to sit at their desk. Now we can take Alma out. We can take it out of the library. We can take it to the shelves. So all the management team have Surface Pros. We don't have desktop PCs. I can go and work wherever I want. I can open up Alma. If I want to check it today, I can do. If I've worked from home previously and accessed Alma, so I'm not restricted to a physical desk in the library, and neither are our staff. So when they're doing kind of work, going out and looking at issues on collections, etc., they can go out there and check. And obviously, we wanted to reduce the number of systems down, and this was a key opportunity for us to stop maintaining all these kind of systems, both in the IT section and also in the library. One of the key areas for us was aligning ourselves with a supplier that we'd have a partnership with. Instead of this kind of relationship where people were telling us, no, you can't do this, no, we're not developing the system. We wanted to work with a supplier that we could actually have a partnership with, that there were avenues open for us to collaborate, to get our ideas, to get our issues over, and actually have an influence in the development of the system. As an early adopter, we were an early adopter obviously back in 2013. We saw that as a really good opportunity for us to actually be involved in the development of the system, especially around UK issues. There weren't many of us in the UK that were moving forward with Alma at that time. So to actually understand where there were particular issues to the UK that we could influence. We were key to look at how we could develop system integrations with Alma. What other key university things could we integrate? So things like our finance system, our student information system, and also a system that would support APIs. So what could we do around the development of APIs? Another thing was around the user community. I think the TALIS community, because there hadn't been many developments in the TALIS system for a number of years, the user community was not kind of very active, and I think that was mainly born out of frustration because things just weren't developing. We were already live with Primo, and we could see that there was kind of a very, very active user community. We'd had that with the Primo community, so we were looking for, again, a system where there was going to be a lot of activity and support amongst the users. I think management information is becoming more and more important. Understanding what the use of our collections, understanding what our users are doing with our collections, where our users are based, proving our worth, are we value for money? I think Fiona touched on that. Making data-driven decisions based on thinking about how the library needs to move forward based on things that are happening within the library. We also wanted to simplify our, We also wanted to simplify our internal processes. So I've mentioned that we'd basically shoehorned a lot of our internal processes into a system that just wasn't built for managing it. So we wanted to, instead of having all these different systems, we were managing process across multiple systems. We wanted to bring that into a single system, streamline our processes. One of the big things was around improving our circulation policies. So we'd had multiple sites, lots and lots of different loan policies, very, very complex, very difficult for our users to understand. And I think quite a lot of our staff didn't understand them either. So we wanted to be able to simplify those and actually move into the system, gave us that opportunity. We possibly could have done that in our old system, but it would have been extremely difficult to unpick the kind of years and years of complexities that have been built in there. And also the simplification of our collections. I think Fiona's talked about librarians and how we like to make things really complex. We really did really make things complex. We have multiple collections, lots of locations, and it gave us a really good opportunity to kind of simplify that and rethink how we're managing our stock. So, kind of looking back now on what we've actually done to achieve some of that, we definitely have reduced our number of systems. I know Fiona showed you your architecture before. We're effectively managing Primo and Alma now. We still have our repository and that data's harvested into Primo, and we have TALIS Aspire, but we've reduced down an awful lot of the work that we were doing. The fact that we now have control of the system, we can see that our staff are much more empowered in the day-to-day management of the system. We don't have to go to IT to ask them to make changes. They're able to be responsive to change. So if we need to move collections around, we're able to do that. So staff feel that they have more control, whereas before I think things just weren't able to change very much. And so we ended up with this kind of build-up of old data in there and things that need a lot of cleaning out. 24-hour monitoring, that's been, I'm going to talk to Fiona about this before, the fact that we've got an external supplier who does that for us. We're not having to rely on our IT services department to turn a server back on, to switch it over, to restart it. In December, Ex Libris did some work at the Amsterdam data centre to put some more resilience behind the servers there. And that happened on Christmas Eve. I think it went off at 5 p.m. on Christmas Eve. The work took place on Christmas Day. There was no interruption to any of our students, and it was basically a seamless operation. We didn't have to worry about it. Our IT department didn't have to worry about it, and our students saw no interruption of service. And that was something before we would have, if our IT department had to do that, we'd have spent weeks and weeks making plans to roll that out. I've mentioned that we've got this system flexibility now. We've got Alma accessible on any device, and we can take Alma anywhere. Mentioned about the fact we've got control over the LMS. Some of the things that we've done and the differences that we've seen by having that control. When we moved to Alma, as well as moving to Alma, we also closed a library and we refurbished a library. And we had to make changes to our stock. We had to move substantial amounts of volumes from one site to another. We were also removing lots of old volumes of stock. And we had a debate as to whether we should do that in our old system or whether we should do that in Alma. And we did a calculation. So in our old system, we were limited to running bulk scripts on 3,000 items per day. So we worked out it would have taken us 3 months to have done those changes. In Alma, it took us 2 hours. So massive, massive efficiency savings. And it means that when we need to move stock, we don't have to keep going to IT and asking for this work to be done, but also it's immediate. So we're able to give information to our students moving forward. This is really, really key actually at the moment. While we're undergoing our library development project, we're constantly moving stock around. So we're moving stock from buildings, we've got kind of little outposts, we're moving stock to different floors, and it means that we can make changes as and when we need, so we don't have to do these bulk changes that'll take weeks and weeks to go forward. We've been able to make changes to our circulation policy. So recently we've moved to automated renewals and we cancelled the fines. That was done very, very quickly over a couple of days. We're able to configure out the emails to users. We're able to get, as well as sending out messages around overdue resources, we're able to get key messages out to users. Our financial year rollover took half an hour end to end. I think when we've done it previously, it would have taken a good few weeks for us to plan in again and actually test everything. One thing that we do have is a premium sandbox, so we do all our testing on a sandbox that's got all our data in, all our configurations, so before we make anything on production, we ensure that it's fully tested on our sandbox environment. Some of the integrations that we've been able to do, well, firstly, we don't have to go to Ex Libris to do the integrations, we can do it all from within the Alma interface, whereas previously we'd have had to have asked our supplier to carry that out. So we've integrated all our self-check machines and book sorters. We've integrated with our book suppliers. We introduced online payments through WPM. We actually sent our first text message yesterday, so that's hot off the press. So we've now introduced text messaging. We're in the process of integrating with our financial system. We're just kind of doing some testing on that, and that's due to go live in the next few weeks. So we've got the Aggresso financial system, and that's currently looks like it's all working. We implemented Easy Proxy last year, so again, those improvements to students' access to resources, very, very simple, and we struggled to have done that in previous systems. And this is a primo one, but again, because of this library development project and us moving stock around the different areas, we're currently introducing Stack Map, which is a little map so that when stock, it basically pops up on Primo showing users where the stock is located. And we see that's going to be really beneficial during this next phase of our project. I mentioned some work we've done on circulation. We removed all our fines last year, so I think in line with a lot of universities are doing now, we see that we don't want to charge fines for books that aren't being used, basically. It's not fair, and we only charge fines if users actually request a book. We've now introduced automated renewals. Again, why do we keep asking people to renew books and bring them back if nobody actually wants them? So we've now introduced that. And we're also now in the process of streamlining the retrieval of our lost books. So at the moment, if somebody doesn't bring a book back, we have to manually put an invoice on our banner system. So we're currently in the process of making sure that entire process is managed within Alma and fully automated, reducing down a lot of staff time in raising invoices and contacting staff. And that's partly why we've introduced a text messaging as well, just to, again, make sure we're able to contact our users in every way possible. Some of the things we've done with resource management, we're now adding in mark records for PDA and ebooks. We've done a lot of work on the mass treatment of records, so we're using normalisation rules. We only have half a cataloguer, so we don't have a massive cataloguing department. So a lot of the work that we do has to be done very efficiently and in bulk. So some of the issues that we had with our records, we recently introduced Talis Aspire. We had a problem with mark fields, and there was a particular mark field that was missing. We were able to script that and import that field into the records without having to do lots of manual work. And again, that was just done as a mass treatment. It took us a few days, but it didn't take us months and months to have to manually populate that. We're able to make changes to authentication in bulk. So again, it means that any changes that we get from publishers, etc., we're able to respond to that. We've talked about managing student data. Yeah, all our student data is managed in our university systems. We don't have a separately controlled library database, but we wanted to make sure that we were getting real-time updates to Alma so that we weren't relying on these bulk uploads from the system. So we use the Alma API to bring the student data in. So as soon as anybody now changes address or school, that information is immediately reflected in Alma. We've also increased the statistical data held in Alma, and that is mainly so that we can get more information about our users and how they're using the collections. So we've brought information in around the user's school and the user's status, such as are they extended, are they writing up, are they registered, just again so we can get more information about the demographic of our students and what they're doing with our collections. We were involved in the original library analytics metrics project, and we really want to build on that. So we've been looking at how we can use the data in Alma with other data sources that we've got, such as easy proxy logs and OpenAthens logs, to look at the e-resource collections and what our students are using. We're using data from Alma along with data from our reading lists. Interesting, we're talking about books that people buy and what's being used. So we're currently analysing, are the books on our reading list that our academics are buying, are they being used, or are we getting more use from patron-driven acquisition books and things like that. So we're doing lots of things with data from our different sources. We've made a big use of all the different reports that are on Alma that have been shared from other institutions. I think that's a real kind of real area. That's a growth area as more institutions contribute their reports. It's something that we can tap into. We're looking at whether or not the data in Alma can help with retention from across the universities. That's something we can contribute to. And I've already mentioned the data from the OpenAthens and easy proxy log files. So we're able to report to particular schools now, so like our business school, who've got a very large group of users overseas, about their students' usage of resources. So rather than just having a kind of a ballpark figure on these are the number of downloads, we can actually segment that into particular user groups and particular students. And this is kind of an example of some of the data that we're using. So I've mentioned how we use it with easy proxy and OpenAthens logs. These are kind of the graphs at the bottom that we kind of present to our the Salford Business School around their e-resource usage of their students. This is a report that we do quarterly, and it's tailored to all the different schools. So it's got data in there relevant to their students. So you can see there we've got book issues, and there's a decline there from 14-15 to 15-16. We're showing expenditure. So I know we've talked before about the mention of co-creation, and that's a big theme that we have in the university at the moment. So we have different purchasing schemes. We have library champions, where we have students in different schools who can purchase materials. We have You Want It, We Get It, and You Try, We Buy, which is patron-driven acquisition. And we're able to plot there to our different schools how their budget compares to other schools across the university. We've got an extensive network now of Alma buddies. So one of the big things that we're able to draw on is that expertise, not just from the Northwest or from the UK, but globally. We've got a very, very active Alma mail list, and if I can guarantee that if we put a question on there, we're guaranteed to get a response. We've got access to the Igloo and Illuna and ePug Ex Libris user groups. There's a very active product working group that works with Ex Libris on getting issues resolved and kind of looking at developments. The developments in the community zone, where we can see how different universities are contributing their bibliographic records, and obviously the analytics that everybody's contributing to as well. It is very much a developing system, and I know that Fiona touched on change before, and this has been kind of a big thing for us, and how we get our staff to think about change and think about Alma as a developing system. There's lots and lots of different ways for us to contribute our ideas through to Ex Libris about what new developments we want to see. So every year there's a NERS vote where we can submit development requests and they get voted on. There's ideas exchange, there's individual development groups, so specific ones around analytics and resource sharing we've been involved in. There's lots of collaboration, there's a developer network. We get our continuing monthly releases, and obviously we've got a very, very strong Alma roadmap that the monthly releases are reflected in. Challenging the norm, I think, very, very different system. We've moved to Alma, which is a very, very different system to Talis. Talis didn't change. We're now in a system that changes constantly. Prior to going live with Alma, we mapped all our individual processes. I think we had 74 processes that we mapped. We then went live with Alma, and that wasn't the end of the project. It was by far not the end of the project. We then had to work with staff. They had to take time to learn Alma and really think about their processes and challenge the processes. We can't just replicate the old system on the new system. This is a new system, it does things differently. But getting staff to think differently about that is very, very difficult. And they like complexity and they like workarounds. How can we get people to think differently? We have worked with Ex Libris actually. We launched something called Challenge Alma. We got to get our staff to think differently about things that they could introduce. We had lots of ideas that came through. Interestingly, a lot of the ideas that came through were things that we could already fix. So there weren't problems in the system. It wasn't that the system needed improving, it's just that we needed to make a configuration change, or that Alma was already doing it, but they just weren't aware of it. So it's that education, and how do we get people to think differently and educate themselves? There's loads and loads of things out there, especially on Alma. There's all the help's fantastic. There are videos, there's lots of training that people can access, but how do we get them to take responsibility to take that upon themselves and not just rely on the systems team to go out and tell them how to use the system? So following on from the kind of reviewing and challenging process, we're now at the stage of developing the new work processes and reviewing and kind of implementing new ways of working. And we've got to continue to do that because Alma changes. Alma changes every month. We get a new release every month, and we've got to continuously review the new functionality that's coming on board and look at how we can utilise that. So going forward, things that we're currently looking at, very keen to look at how we can manage our digital collections within Alma, and how that's going to fit with other things, the other system architecture in the university, around our repository, around our kind of CRIS that we're looking at. We're going to be signing up to the digital content store, the CLA's digital content store, so we're going to be doing some work to integrate Alma with that. We're very much looking forward to the APC's workflow, which is going to be introduced into Alma in 2017. The current APIs that we're working on, we're currently testing real-time ordering API with our main book supplier. We're looking at bringing in student data into a new student portal which is being introduced, and also looking at the British Library Document Supply Service API. We're already starting work on investigating linked data and preparing ourselves for when that's going to be introduced into the system as well. And of course, we're very excited to have access to the ProQuest knowledge base when that gets integrated into the Alma knowledge base. I mentioned as well that over the next year, we are going to be revisiting those original workflows that we did prior to going live with Alma and seeing how far we've come with those, what further improvements we need to make. Key areas for us are going to be digitisation workflow, especially the CLA digital content store that's coming on board, and also around resource sharing. So I think, I was thinking about this quote because I just think we have the key challenge for us is getting people to think differently and accept that change is necessary to make progress. I think that's probably the biggest area really that we're going to be working on. I think the positive now is that our staff generally are very happy with Alma. 3 years ago, I think probably not so, but kind of following on from 3 years, we had a university out to visit us last Friday. I had a range of staff from across the university library. Some of them had been involved in the original project, some of them hadn't, and all of them were extremely positive about Alma and what it's now delivering. So I think we can see that as a success and quite happy about that. And that's it, thank you. So any questions?
Hi, I really enjoyed it, thank you. Just a quick one about the cloud that you were mentioning at the beginning of the process. I know cloud today is perceived already as a commodity. It's there, naturally we go for cloud. But when you did the due diligence at the early stages of the project, were you successful with quantifying in any way what would be the contribution of switching to cloud, meaning some kind of reducing the overall expenditure of IT resources and stuff like that? Or was it more the perception that you need to go to cloud because it will improve your well-being and your day-to-day life?
We did look at cost in that. So and it's a very, very difficult situation because we were asking IT what savings they would make. So it wasn't just the library. We had to ask our IT colleagues what savings would there be. Now, bearing in mind that they just put in a whole new IT infrastructure, financially on the IT infrastructure, there weren't any savings. On staff-wise, there were, but they were saying it was limited. Now, we would dispute that because we know the amount of work that was going on in the background, but politically, that's very, very difficult for us. We could quantify what was happening in the library, but we couldn't quantify that in terms of their IT colleagues and their resource. So, yeah, we did try that. We did try to put that across, but it's quite difficult.
So just to follow up on that, and now looking hindsight, now that you're leveraging the capabilities of the cloud and using a cloud-based system for the last X years, do you see some kind of quantifiable benefits or general benefits from leveraging a cloud system today when you're using it?
I mean, I think I've mentioned kind of a lot of the benefits that we've seen around the fact that we're not having to... I said to Fiona before, I think our relationship with our IT department has changed. So before we'd have had to have asked them to do all these bulk changes, and now we don't. So we can go to Ex Libris and say, we need a restart, oh, this isn't working, and we don't. So we haven't got this relationship where it could take months. So I suppose financially that's difficult to quantify, but for us as a service to be able to be responsive to real, changes that we need to make, it's fantastic for us. How you quantify that, I'm not sure, but yes, we can see real benefits with that.
Hi, Angela, thank you. Jonathan Eaton, London Business School. We're very much smaller than Salford, and I suspect some of the other customers or potential customers in the room. We have an old school LMS. We procured it 20 years ago. The question I'm asking myself is, would a full-blown system that suits the scale of a multi-site university suit an organisation that's small on terms of physical, numbers of people, numbers of items, as opposed to any of the open source alternatives which remain out there? And I just wondered if you, for example, you mentioned Mark records. I keep pointing out that we're dealing with very small numbers of Mark records in the old school way of having to grab them, get them from particular feeds, and then import them, which is something I have to do. I have to script myself, because there's no immediate interface that's acceptable. Would a system like the one you've been working with deliver similar kinds of productivity benefits for a much smaller organisation? Are you in any position? It's a really difficult question to throw at you, but obviously you've seen it at scale.
Yeah.
Do you think it can actually deliver those benefits? Because obviously this is a very significant cost that you pay for these big integrated systems, and that shouldn't be forgotten.
Interestingly, I think what Fiona said before, that we were very about staffing and how many staff we have in different areas. We probably have a high concentration in customer services and not in the back end. So we have half a cataloguer, which is very small. We have a very small systems team. So we had to have a system which was very, very efficient, but is able to deliver to our students the electronic and the digital. So I know you've got presumably a very small physical collection, have you, or is it?
Yes, it's slimmed down to 10,000 items from 20,000.
Right, okay.
But we have a very significant number of e-resources, e-journals, an increasing number of e-books.
Yeah.
And I keep saying it's the same amount of work to manage a small amount of data as it could be for a bigger volume of data, because you've still got to do an import. Whether it's 100 records or 10,000 records, you've still got to curate it. And that's where, the thing is a bit flipped. What looks small can actually be quite big in terms of the resource impact.
Exactly.
But equally, when you're trying to make an early business case, you're looking at quite significant sums of money, and people are sort of sucking their teeth and saying, oh, well, couldn't you go open source or hosted open source? And this kind
But I think with open source, and that's something that we looked at, I've spoken to other institutions that have gone open source, that's fine if you've got staff to support that. I think something like Ex Libris, the question that we just had at the back about moving to the cloud, the fact that we don't have a reliance, we don't have, my team, we're not developers.
No.
We support the system, we support the administration, but we need that expertise, which we've got with Ex Libris, and we wouldn't be able to maintain that. We haven't got the funding for that, to maintain it internally. And I think with open source, it's great if you're a university with developers who can work with their community and put things in, but we just don't have that resource internally. So although on a scale we may look bigger, staffing probably isn't that different. We actually had an open source reading list system up until last year, which we implemented in 2009. And the reason that we've not continued with it was that, for a start, the actual implementation was horrific. We had to bring in consultants and developers to actually get the system to do what we wanted, to customise it, to make it usable. And then we haven't got the resource to develop it. So we put it in, but then that system has stayed the same since 2009, and we've not been able to do anything with it. So you need systems that are going to move, and a supplier that is not got an understanding of those developments, and will keep pace with that change.